Welcome, G Money sports fans, to my very first UFC show. I am super excited for this show. I love the UFC. I think it's for me. I mean, football is obviously my favorite sport. UFC is right behind there with soccer and basketball. So I love UFC. I think there's nothing more exciting than a huge fight card like we have this weekend. So I thought this would be the perfect time for me to get a show in on UFC. Something I want to start doing more often. Giving you guys more UFC bets because I know a lot of people don't know a whole lot about the UFC, and I kind of want to help people, my followers, get more information about UFC, know what to watch for, and who's good, who's not. Kind of my analysis. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means, but I've watched a lot of these guys fight, so I have a good idea of what they bring to the table. And so, without further ado, we'll get right into the card. So the way the UFC works, for people who don't know, it's a lot like boxing, where you have your main event, which is going to be your very last fight, and then there's a main card which has usually five big fights with big names that are underneath the main event. And then from there's prelims, and those prelims are the fighters that are trying to make their way into the title fights, into the big fights. So the way I'm going to kind of do this show, obviously I'm going to pick all five main card fights, and then I also have picks on the prelim fights. I'm not going to go super into detail about those. I'm going to spend most of my time on the main card, but I'll just run through them quick. Very first fight, Ode Osborne versus CJ Vergara. I'm sprinkling Vergara plus 160. Ode Osborne, I've actually watched quite a few of his fights. He's all right. What I like about Vergara is he's coming off of the Fury Fighting the Contender Series. And if you guys know what the Contender Series is, it's Dana White's Contender Series, and basically the Contender Series is trying to get UFC contracts. He looked really impressive. He knocked out his guy in the first round. These guys that come in the Contender Series are handpicked by Dana White, so I think it's a good indication of their skill level. Obviously, he has high hopes for this guy, and I think Ode, he's been around for a couple fights now. He's three UFC fights. He's 1-2. He hasn't faced the best competition, and he hasn't shown that he can handle the UFC. He's also a Contender Series guy. I don't know. I've been sold on Ode Osborne since the Brian Kelleher fight. He just didn't look like a UFC fighter. I still kind of am holding that same opinion, and especially a Vergara getting plus 160 odds. Not my favorite bet of the night, but I definitely like that sprinkle there. But my favorite pick from this fight is for this fight to go the distance. No, minus 150. Both of these guys, it's been a while since they've. See, CJ Vergara hasn't gone to, or no, Ode Osborne hasn't gone to decision since 2016. CJ Vergara hasn't gone to decision since 2016 as well. So I'll go over that as well. For people that don't know, UFC can end in basically three different ways. There's knockout or technical knockout. So that's when, like, obviously someone gets knocked out or the ref has to step in and stop the fight. That's a TKO, technical knockout. And there's submission, which is in wrestling, when you choke someone out or get them in an arm bar or leg bar or something like that. So that's going to be another method of victory, which usually results in a tap out. And then the last way, every fight has three judges. If all UFC fights are 3 rounds except for title fights and main event fights, which are 5. If the fight's not over after the end of those rounds, it goes to decision, judges' scorecards, and you can either win by unanimous decision, so all judges pick you. You can win by split decision, where 2 judges picked you and that one judge picked the other person. or sometimes, very rarely, there's draws. It doesn't happen very often. Um, Obviously, for betting, that messes things up, but it really doesn't happen that often, so you don't have to take it into consideration. So yeah, I believe this fight was not going to go the distance because both of these guys haven't gone a decision in a long time, just because their fighting styles. I think both of them need to make statements. Ode Osborne, if he wants to stick around the UFC, definitely needs to make a statement. And CJ Vergara coming off fresh the Contender Series, I think he will want to make a statement as well. So no better way to do that on a big fight card with a knockout. Going into the next fight, I got Melsick, and I'm not going to pretend to pronounce his last name, against Bruno Souza. I love Melsick here. He's been a very intriguing prospect for a long time, and I love his knockout prop at plus 155. He's been knocking out a lot of guys, and I don't think Bruno Souza is very good. Gian Vellante, minus 120. This is the headline of the early prelims on the UFC Fight Pass. I watched the weigh-ins today, and Chris Barnett looks very out of shape. He's very old, 36. Gian Vellante definitely looks like he's in better shape, especially with heavyweights. That's a huge factor because obviously those heavyweights are running at a heavyweight, and you gotta have pounds, but you gotta have pounds that work for you. I don't know if Chris Barnett's pounds are working for him anymore. It's pretty close there at minus 120, so I like that a lot. And then we go to the prelims. Arguably the most exciting prelim fight is the Ian Gary-Jordan Williams fight. Ian Gary, for those who don't know, his nickname is literally The Future. So it tells you what he thinks about his future in the UFC. He is a very exciting prospect. A lot of people have been talking about him in this fight. He's coming off Cage Warriors, which is another way people make their way into the UFC. He's facing Jordan Williams, who's been in the UFC now a couple fights, both losses. He hasn't looked very. I've watched both of these fights. He hasn't looked like a UFC fighter. Ian Gary, obviously the future. I like the knockout. I'm looking for him to make a statement. Jordan Williams doesn't have very good defense, so I think Ian Gary's going to take advantage and knock him out. Minus 105, it's a very good price. Like that one a lot. This next fight, Nasruddin Imayov, minus 125 against Edmund Shabazian. Nasruddin has a very good win. I forget who was against. Let me look it up. Ian Heinisch, yeah. He beat Ian Heinisch in July. Ian Heinisch, for those who don't know, is a very... he's been around the UFC forever, fought a lot of good fights. So I'm just going off of that win in July. I think he carries the momentum with him. He is 26, younger guy. Edmund is 23, also young guy. So it's kind of a prospect fight. I'm going to go with Nasruddin. And then my last fight here is the Al Inquienta versus Bobby Green. Both of these guys are been around the UFC for a while now. They're both pretty old. Al has not fought in a while. He last fought Dan Hooker on October 5th, 2019. So it's been a while for him. But before that, he was competing for championships. So he's taking a break for a while. Bobby Green also is kind of at the end of his career. He's a very gritty guy. He's a tough out. He's not going to make the fight easy. He is the betting favorite. I do like Al here, though. I just think he's been away for the game for 2 years. So that means it can mean a couple things. Injury obviously plays a lot into the fight game. So he could have been injured. He definitely was injured, but he could have been injured this whole time. I think he's trying to recharge. his batteries, you know, getting ready for that title. Those title fights back in 2018, 2019 takes a toll on you. I think he took some time off, got his mind and his body right. I think he's going to come back. I think the reason he's coming back now is because he wants to make a push again. I think he has the tools to. Bobby Green's fought a lot recently. On an old guy, that's a lot of wear and tear in the body. I don't know if he's going to be very fresh. So I love Al in this spot. Plus 152. Good odds for you. Like I said, not a lock by any means, but I do like that pick there. So those are my undercard picks. Now I'll move on to the main card. The first fight on the main card is a huge fight. This honestly could headline a big fight night, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing this fight again for a title in the coming years. We have Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Justin Gaethje in his last fight fought Khabib in his last fight right after the passing of his father. Just a terrible spot to be in. Khabib's scary enough, and then coming off of losing his dad, no way he was losing that fight. You can't knock Gaethje for that, in my mind. Khabib was just he's a different animal. He's one of the, if not the best UFC fighter of all time, he's definitely one or two. Right there with John Jones and probably George St. Pierre. I think those are the three that I would put in my top three. Khabib is just so dominant. But Gaethje before that was just knocking guys out, and he's such a tough guy. Michael Chandler, the same thing. They're very similar fighters. I just like Gaethje here because I've seen him do it at the top level. I haven't seen Michael Chandler do it yet. Chandler had the fight against Oliveira where he looked okay. I don't think Oliveira is that good. I do think whoever wins this fight is going to probably get a title fight and probably beat him, if I'm being honest, if he survives Poirier, but I also think Poirier probably will beat him. So, I don't know. I like Gaethje here. Like I said, he was right there in terms of challenging for the title, but then he ran into a buzzsaw, which is Khabib and Nurmagomedov. Just not a good style matchup for him. Going back up against a striker is going to be very good for him, and I think he's going to bounce back here and get the win. Also, this fight's not going the distance. Just the style of these two fighters. Definitely going to be a knockout. So if you're going to take Gaethje, take my advice, take Gaethje. Might as well take him to get the extra juice at minus 115 for a knockout. That's just how this fight's going to end. I don't see any other way. Moving on to Shane Burgos, Billy Quarantillo fight. So I watched Billy Quarantillo on Ultimate Fighter. He was on Conor McGregor season. Really scrappy guy. And Shane Burgos has been around UFC for a while now. I've never been particularly a huge fan of Shane Burgos. And he's coming off 2 straight losses. He hasn't won since 2019. Billy had a huge win in his last fight against Gabriel Benitez. I think Billy's one of those guys who's been flown on the radar for a long time. I think this spot's really good for him, and he's going to make a statement here in the main card. His fight in July, I watched that one, and he completely shocked everyone there. He was an underdog coming in, and he really just dominated that fight, honestly. Ended up winning by TKO. He's getting plus 166. He's definitely my dog on this main card. I really like Billy here in this spot. So yeah, my pick there is Billy Quarantillo, Billy Q. Next fight, Frankie Edgar, UFC legend versus Marlon Vera, up-and-coming guy who just beat Sean O'Malley, another up-and-coming guy. I love Frankie Edgar. It's been fun watching him all these years, but it's no secret he's on his way out. Marlon Vera's an up-and-coming guy, very hungry. Everyone in the world was picking Sean O'Malley to beat him just because of his rise to superstardom and crowd favorite. but Marlon Vera came in and shocked the world when he beat him. And I think he's legit. I mean, he hits hard. He obviously knocked Sean O'Malley out, which no one else has done. He fights a really good fight. And I mean, Frankie Edgar, let's be honest, he's 1 or 2 fights left in him, and he's probably out of the UFC. So I don't know how hungry he really is. I mean, it's hard to speak for someone on that. His last fight was in February against Corey Sandhagen, obviously a loss. I don't know. I like Marlon Vera here. I think he's going to be a force in that division for years to come. I think that's going to start here against Frankie Edgar. And then moving on, the 2 championship bouts of the night. I honestly am more excited for the Rose Namajunas Weili Zhang fight. I've been a huge fan of Weili Zhang since the Joanna. Some of these UFC names are so hard. I'm not even gonna try. It was Weili versus Joanna. Last name that there. Fight of the year by far. Just a striking match back and forth. In the first fight, I think Weili started out really well, and Rose kind of caught her. And it's so tough in UFC because it really is one punch, and that can change your entire career. And unfortunately for Weili, she got caught. I think she took that really hard. I've been following her Instagram, and I've seen her training regimen, and I feel like she's put so much into getting this belt back. She wants to be that force in the strawweight division. And I've never been a huge believer in Rose. I feel like she's back and forth. I think winning the title was the top of her mountain. I don't know if she has the love and the dedication to retain that belt. I think it's going to be a really good fight. I'm really excited for this one, but I'm going to go with Weili Zhang. But I think this is definitely the fight of the night. I'm excited for it. I've never watched a Weili Zhang fight and been disappointed. I don't expect it to happen again. Should be a really fun one, and definitely tune in for this one. And moving on to the main, nothing else to say except Kamaru Usman's pound for pound the best fighter in UFC right now. He's just dominated everyone he's been against. Colby Covington, people forget, even though he got his jaw broken by Kamaru, fought him pretty well in the first fight, up until his jaw broke. But he's one of the few guys that was giving Kamaru kind of a fight, and I think part of the reason was Kamaru makes him so good as he just physically dominates people. But with the bad beef between the two of them, he kind of wanted to. It seemed like he wasn't going for the usual strategy of grabbing people and just overpowering them. He kind of sat there and struck back and forth with him, which was a little risky. I kind of think he might go back to his strategy of wrestling a little bit more. Even though Colby Covington is a very good wrestler, I think Kamaru Usman's next level wrestling. I think no matter how he does it, he's going to get it done again. He just hasn't shown weakness in the UFC yet, and until he does, I find it really hard to bet against him. I do want to sprinkle to go to the distance at almost 2-1. I would take Usman money line and then sprinkle to go to the distance. This fight should have gone the distance, and it probably would have if Colby Covington doesn't break his jaw. Now, I mean, maybe his jaw is weak and maybe he'll break again. But I just think at 2-1, I think you're getting a good price there for two really tough fighters that'll probably spend most of the fight trying to grab each other and getting off some good shots. But I think both of them are very gritty guys, and I don't think either one of them is going to want to get knocked out. Especially Colby a second time. If he gets knocked out a second time, he loses all credibility against Kamaru, and his title window is almost out the window at that point. So I do think it might go the distance, and for that reason I won't sprinkle the go the distance, but obviously the big play there is Usman money line. So that is UFC 268. Like I said, if you've never gotten this UFC, it's a really good time to do it. For those who are looking to bet it or just want kind of how it works, breakdowns of anything that you're confused about, reach out to me on DM me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, any of those things. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you about UFC. Like I said, it's one of my favorite sports. It's an up-and-coming sport. Daniel White's done a really good job building this company from the ground up. It's a really fun. I'm not a huge boxing guy. I think boxing gets pretty boring. UFC, there's so much going on, and there's so much you got to be good at. These athletes are literally world-class wrestlers and boxers, and I mean they're hitting with gloves that are like a quarter of the size as boxing gloves, taking real punches, they're taking knees, taking elbows. One of the things I like about it too is you never see the same thing in a card. It's always gonna be different. You're always gonna be surprised by things. It's such a fun sport to be involved with. So I highly recommend getting into it if you can. And I hope my show here today has been convincing, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that these picks hit. So have a good weekend. Make sure to tune in for UFC 268.